Video game cutscenes. Some people love them, some people wish they didn't exist. But whether you feel positive, negative, or just neutral to the story scenes of games, I think we can all appreciate them at times for the acting or graphics, or if they're just entertaining in general. And while most games will use improved character models, or simply the same in-game models for cutscenes, some game creators have taken the alternate route of things like cartoon animations, or even live-action scenes. And that one is what I want to share with you today. 6 games that chose to share their story through live-action cutscenes. Mortal Kombat Mythology's Sub-Zero.
Let's get something straight. I am not a ninja. I am Lin Kuei.
In 1997, the Mortal Kombat series of fighting games released its first spin-off title, Mortal Kombat Mythology's Sub-Zero, which provided backstory for its namesake character, Sub-Zero. While those who played it on Nintendo 64 missed out, PlayStation users who picked up the game were also gifted the series' first, and last thus far, live-action cutscenes. While Mortal Kombat could have taken the stunt casting route to gain extra attention, the actors used for the cutscenes were the stunt performers who performed their character sprites in-game. Most of the actors had already done the motion capture for characters in previous Mortal Kombat games as well. And while the acting isn't exactly award-winning, the choice of live action helps mythologies remain memorable when the odd gameplay was generally a flop. Like many of the games I'll be talking about today, the cutscenes were all filmed in front of a green screen to place the real actors in CGI environments. And they're all relatively simple scenes, which helps the characters to not stick out too much, blending in seamlessly with the fake world behind them. And that simplicity also means that from the start of filming to the end of production, the scenes were completely finished in only 1 month. This game has scenes that I know have stuck in many Mortal Kombat fans' minds to this day, but I think my favorite part might be the bloopers. You can tell the actors had fun, and it's always great to see serious characters just be silly for a moment.
We, you and I. We, you, me, everybody in this row.
Twisted Metal.
I'm getting out of here, and I'm taking your truck.
The Twisted Metal series of vehicle combat games, centered around a twisted and deadly competition, began in 1995. There were 12 different characters to play as in the original game, each with their own unique story and ending, and those are where the live action comes in. All of the game endings were filmed with real actors. However, they never made it into the game, replaced with scrolling text describing each character's fate instead. One of the game designers, David Jaffe, said that the filmed ending scenes were considered too sexist and too violent back when the game came out, which is why they were ultimately cut before release. But they were later included as extras on the game Twisted Metal Head-On Extra Twisted Edition, because, as Jaffe said, it's 2008 now, and what was once offensive is now just, to most folks, cheesy and charming. Indeed, they are silly to watch.
Oh, that's strange. It tastes like...
The game series was rebooted in 2012, for which they actually did use live-action cutscenes. David Jaffe said that they had to be on cheese patrol while filming to make the scenes twisted, dark visual poetry, instead of looking like a joke as with the original. He compared it to making more of a music video than a movie for each scene, and his artistic vision paid off because people actually found the scenes interesting instead of just something to laugh at. They filmed much more than was able to be finished in time for the game, but David Jaffe has posted some of the unfinished scenes on his YouTube channel for fans who are curious about what they missed. And now a live-action TV series of Twisted Metal is going to be produced, so this series just loves its live action. Resident Evil.
This case was just too weird. This case was...
Resident Evil, the beginning of the classic survival horror series, often credited as what re-sparked an interest in zombie-themed media, was originally released in 1996, and with it, a few live-action cutscenes for the beginning and end of the game. One of the game directors, Shinji Mikami, said that they wanted the opening movie to really scare players. But back then, the opening was considered too violent for North American audiences, and it had to be altered from the Japanese release of the game. Even with those changes, Resident Evil was given a mature rating by the ESRB, among the first of games to receive that rating. But they removed a lot of the opening scene that showed the character Joseph being killed by a zombie dog, and even removed a shot of the character Chris simply smoking a cigarette. The colors were also removed, likely to make the blood less obvious. The actors in these scenes were only credited by their first names, which caused Resident Evil fans to try and figure out who these mysterious people were. Some succeeded and were able to contact a few of the actors, like those for Chris and Rebecca, who had mostly forgotten about it as it was a short job decades ago, but they definitely remembered having to dye their hair. Director Mikami lamented that he wished he had chosen the actors better based on their acting abilities, saying that the actress for Jill, who was only a high schooler, could have done a better job. But hey, at least these scenes are extremely memorable regardless. The original Resident Evil wasn't the only game to feature live-action footage. One of the latest games in the series, the 2020 remake of Resident Evil 3, featured real actors for the few minutes of footage that introduced the setting of the game at the beginning, though this time around they kept the main characters purely animated. But if you want a taste of what some of the other games could have been like with live-action cutscenes, a few have used motion capture actors in costume for the use of video storyboard before they did the real deal with the actual motion capture suits. It's really interesting to watch and compare. The need for speed.
Make sure you do all your racing in the game. On the streets, drive safely and responsibly, and wear your seatbelt.
The Need for Speed franchise of street racing games started in 1994, where you could virtually race in real cars. And since these cars actually exist, the game sprinkled in a few videos of the real things driving on racetracks. And while that's most of what you get for the cutscenes, there were also acted scenes that would play if the police caught you during certain game modes.
Congratulations! You've just won an all-expenses-paid county vacation.
It wasn't until 2005 with the game Need for Speed Most Wanted that the live-action acted scenes returned, where you view most of the story through the window of your car. A filter was put over the scenes to help the real actors blend in with the completely CGI world, which makes for a really interesting viewing experience. You have to do a double take sometimes to realize, wait, this isn't animated, since the faces are smoothed so much it almost looks fake. Carbon, the next game in the series, did the same thing. The director of the game, David Footman, said that making green screen scenes like this was a challenge for him and the actors, as it required a lot of imagination from them to properly interact with an environment that didn't really exist around them. And that's not all the extra effort they had to put in, because the actors also did motion capture to portray their characters in animated form during gameplay sections. After live action was skipped by the franchise for their 2007 game, the 2008 title Need for Speed Undercover brought it back. This time without the filters and green screen, which makes the game look more movie-like. And this style was brought back way later for the 2015 reboot of the series, titled Need for Speed, which offered the player first-person live-action cutscenes in a more direct way than previous titles did, with a feeling more like you're watching through a VR headset. Unfortunately, while the producer Leanne Loom said that it made the game more immersive, the live-action cutscenes were received poorly in this title. Perhaps because of this, none of the games since have featured live action, but since they took an 11-year break before, there's no guarantee this series won't use it a sixth time and keep experimenting with it. Quantum Break.
I'm going to stand. I'm going to leave. And the one on your right is going to shoot you in the head.
This game's choice of live action might be the most interesting out of all the ones mentioned here. Quantum Break is a true multimedia experience that pairs an action video game with the usual animated scenes you would expect, alongside a 4-episode live-action TV show interspersed throughout, featuring the same characters played by the same actors. The game studio, Remedy Entertainment, had previously dabbled in live-action moments in their series Alan Wake, but this was the biggest they had ever gone with it. And it makes Quantum Break really unlike any other game, breaking itself up with 20-minute long live-action cutscenes that are like an HD look into the characters you interact with in-game. Though having such long cutscenes is generally unheard of outside of games like the Metal Gear series, some reviewers like IGN thought that they were gripping enough to not be annoying or boring. GameSpot's reviewers were less into it, but still did think that they were great for the overall plot to show things from the antagonist's side, making the game deeper with the episodes than without, though there is still the option to skip them. And these episodes are also affected by your choices in the game, which creates a lot of different possibilities for what you might end up seeing. All in all, it was a daring artistic choice that generally paid off well for Quantum Break, though the TV show concept is not likely to become something we'll see in many other games anytime soon. Command and Conquer.
They hate everything we stand for. Freedom, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, apple pie. Did I say freedom? Well, it's worth saying again.
The war strategy game series Command & Conquer started in 1995 and has released many, many games since. One thing that has remained fairly consistent ever since the beginning is the use of live-action cutscenes since the very first title. These show the behind-the-scenes aspects of war outside of the battlefields you play on, as fictional military and political figures guide you through really interesting stories that sometimes even include things like time travel, like Albert Einstein going back to erase Hitler from history. Videogamer.com described the Command & Conquer series as over-the-top and tongue-in-cheek, and that really comes in through these cutscenes that don't always take themselves too seriously. It adds an extra layer of entertainment to a series already adored for its real-time strategy gameplay. Executive producer Chris Corey said in an interview with IGN that the live-action cinematics are a staple of the Red Alert series, and with their more recent titles, like 2008's Red Alert 3, they really aimed for a movie-like production, including big stars like Tim Curry and George Takei. And this game's cutscenes in particular are just so funny to me. I adore the way they made it campy on purpose without pushing it too far. It's definitely the most interesting Command & Conquer game I've looked at when it comes to these scenes, but I'll let it speak for itself.
I'm escaping to the one place that hasn't been corrupted by capitalism. Space!
So, those were 6 titles that opted to take the road less traveled, making their video games with live-action cutscenes. What do you think of it all? Should more games use this method, or is it better left in the 90s? But whether good or bad, serious or silly, I think we can all agree that it's cool to look at games like these, and there are even more than what I mentioned in this video. So feel free to share your favorite live-action games in the comments if I didn't talk about them today. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for watching, and have a very groovy day. I will see you in the next video.
Conquer is like a really weird word. It's like fork.